Before Ghost of Tsushima or Sekiro, one samurai game did it all first. So let's rewind back. The year is 2002. This was a landmark moment in the gaming industry, often described as a revolution. It was the first full year of the 6th generation console war, with the PlayStation 2 firmly established, the Xbox just launched, and the Nintendo GameCube competing fiercely. This period was defined by a massive leap in technical power, a new focus on cinematic storytelling, and a diversification of genres that laid the groundwork for modern gaming. So sit back, slap me on that second monitor, or grab some snacks because this is my comprehensive deep dive, and here's how this era changed gaming and how Onimusha 2 stood out within it. So let's talk a little bit more about the overall shift to this brand new era. Because the gaming revolution of 2002 was not about one single innovation, but a combination of several major shifts. With the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube on the market, developers were no longer constrained by the hardware limitations of the previous generation. This led to a huge leap in overall visual fidelity, character models became more detailed, environments were a bit more expansive, and special effects like lighting and particle effects created a bit more of an immersive and cinematic experience. Games started to tell a lot more complex stories with fully voiced characters, motion captured cutscenes, and branching dialogue. Titles like Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, Grand Theft Auto Vice City introduced massive open worlds that allow players this overall just freedom. And other classic genres like platformers and RPGs were just still popular. They were being reimagined. This was the year of the cinematic stealth game Splinter Cell, the stylish platformer Sly Cooper, and the emotional action RPG Kingdom Hearts, showing that games could appeal to broader audiences with rich, engaging experiences. The bigger question is, where does Onimusha 2's place in this revolution? Now, Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny was a perfect representation of the 2002 gaming revolution. It was a flagship title for the dominant PS2, showing that the console's power and Capcom's ability to push hardware to its limits. This game massively blended the old with the new, utilizing highly detailed pre-rendered backgrounds for stunning environments, a trick that was perfected in Resident Evil, but placed high polygon real-time 3D characters on top. This allowed for both beautiful, static scenes and fluid dynamic combat, creating this cinematic feel that few games could match at that time. And then from the star-studded voice cast in Japan to its dramatic plot-heavy narrative, Onimusha 2 was a clear example of games evolving to tell stories with the same gravity as blockbuster films. Its full motion video sequences and use of motion capture technology were cutting edge for the time. Now, while Onimusha 2 fits perfectly into the trends of 2002, several key elements made it a standout title that even holds up even in today's modern day gaming. So, unlike most fantasy games, Onimusha 2 is grounded by its supernatural elements, but in real Japanese history. Its overall core story of samurai and demons was complemented by the inclusion of real-life historical figures like Magoichi Saiga and A.K. Ankokuji. This unique blend of fact and fiction gave the game a depth of cultural weight that was a rare in Western-focused titles. Also in this era, where many action games rewarded button mashing, Onimusha 2 combat demanded overall skill, and the major mechanic of this game is the Isen mechanic. It's a high-risk, high-reward counterattack, required perfect timing and an understanding of enemy attack patterns. Mastering this single precision-based mechanic was far more rewarding than simply just landing some long, overdrawn combo. Also, there was a unique ally system. Utilizing the gifting system was a novel mechanic for the action genre. By building relationships with different allies through gifts, the player can overall influence the story, unlock different cutscenes, and even receive certain assistance in battle. This added a strategic and emotional layer beyond the combat, making the world feel a bit more alive and reactive to the player's choices. So I want to sit down before we jump right into what Onimusha 2 is. I want to talk about some of the real life history and the supernatural lore of this game. So starting off, we are in the Sengoku period of Japan. This time period takes place between 1467 all the way up to 1603. This was basically probably one of the most craziest time periods of Japan's overall lore and history, which this basically was intense political and social chaos, making it honestly the perfect backdrop for supernatural stories. Unlike earlier eras with a strong centralized government, the power of the shogun and the emperor had overall waned, leading to a breakdown of traditional authority. This created a fractured landscape of constant civil war, treachery, and the Gekokujo, which basically means the low overthrowing the high. This environment of lawlessness and instability lends itself well to the unknown, where ancient gods, Shintoism, wandering spirits, which is based on Buddhism, and demonic forces, which are yokai, can thrive and exert influence in the absence of a strong human order. Now, Onimusha 2 takes this type of lore and spins it a little bit, immersing you in the heart of the Sengoku period, Japan's legendary age of the warring states. Like I said, this had fractured alliances, brutal betrayals, and relentless ambition. Oda Nobunaga, the game's main antagonist, was a real-life daimyo infamous for his ruthless quest to unify Japan. His historical nickname, the Demon King of the Sixth Heaven, was not just for show. He razed temples, destroyed all of his rivals, and inspired terror across the land. And that right there sets this game to take the reputation and crank it to 11, literally making him quite literally the vessel for demonic power. Now, some of the main characters you will notice in this game are also based on real life individuals, but just reimagined for Onimusha 2. So starting off with our protagonist, Jubei Yagyu. He is inspired by the legendary Yagyu Jubei Mitsuyoshi, a master swordsman who served the Tokugawa shogunate. The real Jubei was famed for his missing eye and mysterious life, but in Onimusha 2, he basically becomes this quintessential lone wolf chosen by fate and the Oni Gauntlet to battle supernatural evil. Next, we meet Magoichi Saika, who is based on the leader of the Saika Ikki, a group of mercenary sharpshooters who famously resisted Nobunaga's armies with early firearms. The game turns him into a gun-wielding ally, embodying the rebellious spirit of his historical counterpart. Next, we have AK and Kokuji, inspired by Sohei, which are warrior monks who defended Buddhist temples against Nobunaga's anti-religious campaigns. The real AK was both a priest and a battlefield commander, who is honestly a perfect fit for Onimusha's blend of spirituality and violence. Then we have, of course, our lovely lady Oyu, who is basically channeling the Onabugeisha tradition. Oyu represents the rare but real female samurai who fought and led during the Sengoku era. Her character echoes the grit and influence of figures like Tomoe Gozen and Oichi. And then last but not least, we have Kotaro Fuma, who is drawn from the legendary ninja leader Fuma Kotaro, who is famous for guerrilla tactics and shadowy warfare. Onimusha's Kotaro is a youthful, mysterious ninja, just keeping the myth alive. Now, understanding both the real-life counterparts and overall the in-game counterparts, it really shows that the devs really trying to just immerse the world into the their lore, how it used to be, and just kind of just really giving nice backdrops for games. But of course, when it comes to real life and everything, we gotta talk about the supernatural, because anybody who knows anything about Japan, most of their folklore is honestly one of the scariest folklores known to human history. So Japanese folklore is packed with oni, which oni are essentially hulking horned demons that can wield like iron clubs. They often serve as agents of chaos or punishment for the wicked. Onimusha 2's Genma are a more organized, intelligent breed, echoing the Heian era tales where demons weren't just monsters, but they were actually cunning strategists and would-be rulers of the world. The game's soul absorption mechanic is also rooted in Shinto and Buddhist ideas of ki, or spiritual energy, and overall karma. By purifying evil and collecting souls, Jubei isn't just powering up, he's restoring harmony to a world thrown out of balance by Nobunaga's demonic pact. There are 5 weapon elemental orbs that Jubei can collect in Onimusha 2, which are known as the Gogia no Tama, or the Orbs of the 5 Elements. Now, this concept is deeply rooted in East Asian cosmology, particularly in Chinese philosophy, Wuxing, and Japanese Buddhism, Godai. The orbs and their corresponding virtues represent the fundamental elements of the universe and the qualities a person must embody to achieve harmony and power. So let's actually talk a little bit about those 5 orbs, because these are essentially the weapons that you will end up gaining throughout. So we have the Earth Orb, which the virtue of this one basically means gi, or righteousness and justice. The real life meaning is, in both Japanese Bushido and Confucian philosophy, gi is the most important virtue. It represents a strict adherence to a moral code, sense of duty, and the power to make the right decision without wavering. It is the bone that gives a person firmness and stature. In a spiritual sense, the element of earth, or chi, represents stability, groundedness, and the physical body. Now, the weapon that is tied to this orb is, of course, something that is very fitting. It is a hammer. This very powerful hammer, by the way, does a crap ton of damage as well. But the way that this weapon is, it really fits the influence of the real life meaning behind it. Next, we have the Water Orb, or the virtue of Rei, which is politeness and courtesy. The real life meaning behind this, Rei goes beyond the simple matters. It is the outward expression of a benevolent heart and a deep respect for others. It is the core of Japanese etiquette and is believed to bring harmony to society. The element of water, sui, is associated with the adaptability, flow, and change. It represents the ability to be flexible and to understand the feelings of others. Now, of course, the weapon that is tied to this element is a spear, which can be used overall as some way of being flexible. It allows the practitioner to be able to wield it in many different ways and being able to at least flow like water. Next, we have the Fire Orb, or meaning courage. The real life meaning behind this, in context of Bushido, courage is not just about being fearless in battle. True you is having the courage to do what is right even when faced with overwhelming odds or personal danger. It is tied to a person's passion and drive. The element of fire, ka, represents destruction and energy, but also passion and the powerful drive to act. Now, this is tied to the fire sword that you gain later in the game, and honestly, it is an optional weapon to obtain. You gain it literally right before you get to the final boss with the Nobunaga, and sadly, in my gameplay, I could not get it because trying to do that and as well as trying to fight Nobunaga at the same time, I was not about to put myself through that. But overall, it does make sense for why they made it that way. Next we have is the Wind Orb, or Jin, or benevolence and compassion. Jin is the virtue of humanity and kindness. It is the compassion one feels for others, especially those in a position of power. It represents the highest attribute of the human soul. The element of wind, or Fu, symbolizes freedom, and the mind. It is associated with being open-minded, wise, and compassionate as it moves freely and touches everything. Now, this wind orb is based off of the dual sword that you obtain, the Senpu Mata, which basically allows you to do wind attacks, and it can flow. You can pretty much combo this thing as much as possible. Then we have the Void Orb, which is Shin, or trust and sincerity. Shin represents a person's honesty, sincerity, and unwavering trustworthiness. Without it, none of the other virtues can be fully realized. It is the foundation of loyalty and honor. The element of Void, or Ku, also means sky or heaven. It is regarded as the highest of all elements. It represents the spirit, the pure energy, and the potential for creativity and the power that comes from a clean, sincere heart. It is a unifying force that binds all the other elements together. Now, this Void Orb, I feel like, is based off of the Boraito, which is essentially this lightning-based sword that you get very early on. It's the first demonic weapon you can obtain. And honestly, without this weapon, you need all of these weapons to be able to even defeat Nobunaga. His final boss battle, it's not much of a need, but it makes life a lot easier because he's only really damaged through the elemental attacks. But overall, there is an internal struggle, right? This is a cyclical mythology. Onimusha's world is built on the idea of endless conflict between humans and demons, a cycle that repeats across generations. The Oni Gauntlet, a sacred relic, channels divine power but binds its wearer to a never-ending war. Direct nod to the Japanese myths where heroes inherit both the blessings and the burdens of their ancestors. The concept of Ishin, which is the one flash kill essentially, is more than a gameplay mechanic. It's a reflection of the samurai ideal of Ichigo Ichi, the notion that every encounter is unique and must be met with total focus as if it was your very last. So speaking about swords and mechanics and weapons and such, we have to keep in mind there are real sword techniques versus some of the game mechanics. So real Japanese swordsmanship, or kenjutsu, and the way it's depicted in video games are often miles apart. Games prioritize spectacle, power, and stylized moves to make the player feel cool, while real-world techniques focus on efficiency, control, and survival. So real kenjutsu techniques are often about a single decisive strike to end a fight quickly. It emphasizes iaijutsu, the art of drawing the sword, striking in one fluid motion. Stances are grounded and low to maintain balance. The footwork is a crucial element for generating power and positioning. Combat is fast, precise, and often over in a singular second. Weapons like spears and bows are also more common on a battlefield than overall swords because of the simple way of how kenjutsu works. The entire philosophy behind kenjutsu was essentially like, we want this battle to be done and over with within a second. We don't want to keep lasting long, especially for most samurais who use katanas. Katanas are not meant for long endurance fights. It's meant to just, it's meant for a one-hit kill. And the blades aren't even built in essential a way to be able to deal with long battles. So when it came to war, they often just used basic regular swords or spears or even bows, just something that was a little bit that can withstand multiple abuse over time. Now in game, sword fighting is often just about combo chains, flashy special moves, and some drawn out duels. Characters can dual wield massive swords, perform unrealistic aerial attacks, or channel magical energy through their blades. These are designed for entertainment but not realism. But some games might borrow from real martial arts. The ultimate goal is to create an engaging gameplay loop, not an accurate combat simulation. But that's one thing that I like about Onimusha 2's overall gameplay, is that it takes from that real kenjutsu but make it work. Most fights, if you can give the Ishin counter off pretty good, most enemies just die in one hit. And sometimes you can get punished sometimes just by dealing with multiple attacks at the singular time, and you also cannot block for too long. It tries to bring realism to the game, and that's one thing I like about it. It's definitely one of the more OGs out there. But when it comes to the reception of how the reception of samurai media differs significantly between Japan and the West due to the different cultural contexts and historical perspectives. So, on Japan's side of things, samurai history is their own history, complex, layered, and very painful. They see the samurai not just as romanticized heroes, but also as part of a feudal system that was often cruel and very oppressive to common people. While they appreciate the romanticized aspects and the ideals of loyalty and honor, Bushido, they also have a more nuanced understanding of the social and political realities. Modern Japanese media is more likely to portray these samurai with a balanced view, acknowledging their violence and flawed humanity alongside their admirable qualities. Then, us in the West, understanding of the samurai is often shaped by a sense of exoticism and romanticized view of their otherness. The samurai is often seen as these superhuman, honor-bound automatons who exist in a world of strict codes and unwavering loyalty, an image largely fueled by post-World War II revisionist propaganda. This perspective frequently overlooks the historical complexities and internal conflicts of the samurai class. The popularity of samurai films in the West is often tied to a similarity to westerns, which also feature wandering Ronin-like figures bringing justice to lawless lands. This familiarity made the genre accessible and exciting to a Western audience. So when you take this philosophy between both worlds, and Japan or Capcom in its sense understanding like, hey, this can suit many people. This is what birthed the Onimusha series. But I feel like Onimusha really decided to take off once Onimusha 2 came in. And that's where we get the full journey of Jubei Yagyu. So overall, the journey of Onimusha 2 begins with Jubei Yagyu returning to his hometown only to find it in ruins, his family and all its residents slain by demons. This event solidifies Jubei's core motivation, a personal quest for revenge against the demon lord Oda Nobunaga. The initial sequence serves as a tutorial introducing the game's core mechanics. The controls and fixed camera angles are a throwback to Capcom's Resident Evil series, giving the game a cinematic yet rugged feel. Now, the original PS2 version utilized tank controls with the D-pad, but what I'm currently playing on is through the Steam's remaster, which basically allows for the analog stick option to be a bit more fluid for modern movement. Now, Jubei's initial encounter with demons teaches him about his unique ability to absorb demon souls, a power that he's inherited from his very Oni mother. This is the foundation of the game's progression system. So when you are absorbing souls, you will come across 4 types of souls. The red souls are used to enhance and upgrade Jubei's weapons. The blue souls be able to restore Jubei's magic, allowing for more special attacks. Yellow souls can restore Jubei's health, and purple souls allow Jubei to temporarily transform into his powerful Onimusha form, which greatly boosts his strength and damage. Very similar to Dante from Devil May Cry's Devil Trigger. Now, once you arrive outside of Jubei's hometown, you basically can now move forward to the Onimusha town, which basically acts as the game's hub world, and you learn about the ally system. So upon arriving at Onimusha town, Jubei is introduced to the game's innovative ally system. This right here allows him to be able to meet key historical figures who also harbor grudges against Nobunaga and his demonic army. The characters are based on the real-life historical figures from the Sengoku period. Like I said earlier, Magoichi Saiga, who is a skilled gunman and the leader of the Saiga mercenary clan, is known for his powerful firearms and independence. AK Enkokuji, a formidable military monk and master of the Hoizon spear, whose tragic past drives his desire to become a feudal lord. Then there's Kotaro Fuma, a young ninja with a deep-seated hatred for women, but it's a trait rooted in his own painful history. Then, of course, there is the baddie herself, Oyu, a mysterious and elegant woman. Jubei can give gifts to these allies to increase his bond with them. The strength of this relationship determines which characters will appear to help Jubei during his critical moments, especially providing both combat assistance and unique story scenes. So that was actually, the ally system is by far some of the best that I've seen when it comes to it, because whoever you gift items to the most, because gifting basically works on listening to the character, listen to what they like, and then you give them items to what they like. The more you do that, the more their affinity will raise. And then once their affinity raise, let's say for instance you're in the middle of a battle and your health reaches a specific point, they will come to help you out. But you have to be careful who you give more items to, because if you keep gifting to one person, some of the other people will lose affinity overall, and that will be able to change your overall endings and outcomes later in the game. But throughout this time, man, mastering combat in Onimusha 2 is quite interesting. The Ishin is basically the major counter-attack mechanic. It's not a parry, it's a precision strike that instantly kills an enemy. The window for performing an Ishin is very tight and requires a mastery of timing, just overall demanding a deep understanding of enemy attack patterns. There's the input windows, which are the two main ways to perform the Ishin. There's the critical Ishin, which attacks right before an enemy's attack connects. If you swing too early, you will simply just interrupt the enemy's attack with a regular strike, but if you swing too late, you'll be hit. So the window is very tight. Of course, there's the deflect Ishin, which you can block right before being hit, then immediately attack. This method can be a bit more forgiving than the critical Ishin and is effective against all melee attacks. But in Onimusha 2, you can chain Ishin attacks together. If you successfully perform the charged Ishin, continue to press the attack button, then you can unleash a powerful combo, which is basically essentially a very useful against bosses and tougher enemies that don't die from a single Ishin attack. Now, I want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the different friendships, the choices, and overall the replay value. So the ally system in Onimusha 2 is a unique and defining feature that sets it apart from other action games of its era. It's a key mechanic that directly links players' choices to the story and gameplay, significantly enhancing the game's replay value. The ally system, let's explain that just a little bit, because at its core, the ally system is basically the relationship building mechanic centered around Jubei's interactions with the four main historical figures. Maigo Ishisaga, like I said, the cynical but skilled gunman, AK, a boisterous and ambitious monk who wields a spear, Kotaro, a young ninja with a deep-seated mistrust of women, and then Oyu, that mysterious and graceful swordsman. Now, the system is managed through gift giving. Now, throughout the game, like I said, you can find different items and stuff to give gifts to them. For an example, AK loves alcohol, while Mogiichi prefers a lot of books. Giving a disliked item can also lower the character's affection. Now, the choices you make in the ally system have a direct and lasting impact on your entire playthrough. The game tracks the bond level with each character. Now, the crazy part about this is you yourself cannot track this, so it's kind of just like hoping to God that you are paying attention. So let's talk a little bit about his entire journey through Onimusha 2. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I definitely say skip to the next chapter, because I kind of want to talk a little bit about the overall lore and the story about Onimusha 2 and Jubei Yagyu's revenge tale. Now, the game's narrative follows Jubei's hunt for Nobunaga, taking him through very diverse locations like the mines, Gifu Castle, if you guys remember from the very first Onimusha game, and the demon-infested Fog Valley. Along the way, he confronts powerful demonic adversaries, most notably Gogen Datetsu, or the Dantes as another nickname, a noble demon swordsman who respects Jubei's potential and keeps sparing his life, longing for a true final duel. The allies' stories unfold through Jubei's interactions with him, as Eke's jovial facade hides the grief of his wife and daughter's death, motivating his ambition to protect others and become a feudal lord. There's Oyu's secret identity as Orichi, which is Nobunaga's sister, adds a lot more of a complex layer of loyalty and betrayal to the plot. She uses her knowledge to help Jubei, but her ultimate allegiance remains a point of tension. So throughout your time playing this, right, you would come down to the final showdown. After collecting all of the orbs that you gain from overall fighting the demons, because there's two types of orbs. There's the elemental orbs that allows you to get the weapons, and then there's the orbs that allows you to defeat Oda Nobunaga. Each of those orbs represent a specific type of virtue that is designed through the demons that the Oni clan has created. Jubei will have his final climactic confrontation with Gogen Datetsu. This duel is a test of honor and skill, with Jubei using the demon flute that he obtained to break through Gogen Datetsu's magic barrier and finally engage him in a fair fight. This game culminates in a battle with the true final boss, with Oda Nobunaga himself. This boss fight is a masterful test of every single skill and technique that Jubei has acquired throughout the game, from the Ishin counter to his array of elemental weapons. Defeating Nobunaga, Jubei uses the power of the 5 orbs to transform into the ultimate Onimusha form for the final battle with the demon god. The game's ending is bittersweet, with Jubei and Oyu going their separate ways, leaving an uncertain future. The final scene of Nobunaga's crows suggests that even after his defeat, the demonic threat has not been fully eradicated. Now, of course, depending on what you've done throughout the game with your allies would dictate what ending you get. Now, I spent a lot of time with Mogiichi as well as OU, but it seemed like my affinity was raised a bit more of OU, but it was not enough because I was actually missed out on I needed to send her a bit more gifts to be able to get a nice final scene, which basically allows them to kiss each other. Other than that, it was just a weird farewell and a very weird ending as well. So if you guys have played Onimusha either in the past, back when it first came out, or if you played it recently, let me know what ending you guys got or who did you gift more to. But this relationship influences the game in several ways. Story progression, certain scenes, and plot points will only be triggered if your bond with a specific character is high enough. This means overall you will see unique dialogue, cutscenes, and character development based on who you chose to befriend. At specific predetermined points in the game, your allies will come to Jubei's aid in boss fights or difficult encounters. The ally who shows up is always the one with whom you have the strongest bond to. Each ally brings their unique skills to the fight, from AK's powerful spear attacks to Magoichi's ranged gunfire. And as well as the game's ending is predetermined by who your main ally is. There is a different ending for each of the 4 characters, as well as a bad ending, even if you fail to establish a strong bond with anyone. Like me, for example, my main ending was overall having the weird awkward moment with OU, where it was just a simple farewell and I did not get my kiss, god damn it. But I also had to take down AK earlier on because I didn't really I gifted him maybe 2 things of liquor overall, and it was just like, dang, I did not expect him to turn on me later on. So I having to defeat him was kind of a sad moment, and it seemed like he wanted it to happen in a sense. He seemed like he was going through a lot of trouble with dealing with the death of his family overall. But this is what makes the replay value so good, and the ally system is that primary driver of Onimusha's 2 replay value. A single playthrough only allows you to experience one of the 4 main story paths. To see everything the game has to offer, you must replay it multiple amount of times, each time focusing on building a bond with a different character. Each playthrough feels unique. A run focused on OU reveals her true identity as Odaiichi's Nobunaga's sister and leads to a more intimate, dramatic ending. In contrast, a run focused on Eke delves into his tragic backstory and his motivations for seeking power. The combat assistance from allies is more than just a different character model, it changes the dynamic of certain fights. Having Mogiichi assist you in a boss battle offers a different strategic advantage than having AK, which adds a variety to the gameplay. By making player relationships a central pillar of the experience, Onimusha 2 created a game that was not just about action, but also about choices and consequences, encouraging players to revisit the game multiple times to see all the different stories waiting to be told. But Capcom was known for pushing hardware, man. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny was a prime example on the PS2. The game leveraged the PS2's Emotion engine, which was an engine to render beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds while keeping high fidelity, real-time 3D character models on top. This technique allowed for stunning visual detail that would have been impossible to render in real time at the time. The game featured excellent lighting and particle effects, adding to its cinematic and immersive feel. While a definitive technical breakdown of Onimusha 2's PS2 performance is hard to come by, the game's original director, Motohide Esuro, stated that the original game was hard-coded to the PS2's hardware. This likely involved using a console's unique emotion engine and graphics synthesizer to their fullest potential. Capcom was well known for pushing the PS2 to its limits, and Onimusha 2 showcases this with high-fidelity character models, intricate to real-time lighting effects, and seamless transitions between gameplay and pre-rendered backgrounds. The use of pre-rendered backgrounds was a common visual trick of the era. Now, not many people would know like specific visual tricks like, oh, Silent Hill. They wanted to expand this game so much, but they couldn't. So they decided to add fog, which made Silent Hill one of the most unique horror games that came out during the PS1. So originally, this was popularized by Capcom's own Resident Evil series with the whole visual tricks and finding different ways, because that technique allowed developers to create highly detailed static environments without the need to render them in real time, being able to free up the console's resources to focus on the character models, the enemies, and special effects. But in Onimusha 2, the backgrounds are pre-rendered but animated, giving the illusion of a living, breathing world. Now, some of the things I do want to talk about is the cut content and some of the unused assets. Some of the original content remains, like the unused cave room. I should have the video playing right here. And the concepts for Onimusha 2 were cut or modified before its final release. One of the most notable pieces of cut content is an unused cave area that can be accessed in the prototype versions of the game. But there are other content that has been speculated or confirmed to be cut, which includes like a fifth ally for Jubei, mentioned by the director but never appearing in the final game, some regional art and costumes that were exclusive to specific regions in the original PS2 release but were removed in later remasters, and then there was going to be a different intro song which is called Russian Roulette by Tomoyasu Hote, and that song is a banger. If you haven't listened to it, please go listen to it right now. But this was featured in the original Japanese version but was cut from later releases due to licensing issues. Other things that was like localization changes and the voice acting. Localization of Onimusha 2 saw several significant changes, particularly in the voice acting, which had a different reception between the original Japanese and Western releases. Japanese voice acting, the version featured a well-known cast, which was a huge draw for the game. The voice acting was generally considered high quality and added to the dramatic tone of the game. But on our side of things, the original PS2 English dub was often highly criticized. It was considered horrid and mono-sounding by many critics and players, unlike the first Onimusha, which had a Japanese audio option. Onimusha 2 forced players in the West to use the English dub, which is a point of frustration for many. The script was also noted to have some odd translations and grammatical errors. Later remasters of the game introduced the option for dual audio, allowing players to finally experience the game with their original Japanese voices. But last and not least, let's talk about the legacy of Onimusha's impact on today's modern gaming. The legacy of Onimusha 2's Samurai Destiny is most evident in its specific design philosophies that have been adopted and refined by some of the most critically acclaimed modern games. While it may not always be cited by name, but its core ideas, a blend of historical accuracy with supernatural fantasy, a focus on precision combat, and an evolving relationship system created a blueprint for success that is still followed in today's gaming. Onimusha 2's most significant legacy is its focus on high-risk, high-reward combat, centered around the Ishin mechanic. In an era where most action games were about button mashing, the Ishin demanded perfect timing, rewarding a split-second counter with an instant kill. This design philosophy has become a hallmark of modern action games. Let's look at a couple. Sekiro Shadows Dies Twice. This is the most direct descendant of Onimusha's combat. Sekiro's entire combat system is built on the concept of deflecting the opponent's attack to break their posture. Just like the Ishin, a perfectly timed deflect in Sekiro can lead to a devastating instant kill blow. The emphasis on reading the enemy's animations and mastering timing over simply just spamming the attack is a direct evolution of Onimusha's philosophy. The next, the critically acclaimed Ghost of Tsushima. The game's perfect parry mechanic functions in much the same way as the Ishin. A successful, well-timed parry provides a powerful counterattack that can instantly defeat weaker enemies or stagger stronger ones. Ghost of Tsushima's commitment to grounded, realistic sword combat combined with this cinematic presentation also owes a depth to Onimusha's style. Then, last but not least, let's talk a little bit about Nioh 1 and Nioh 2, and hopefully Nioh 3 when that comes out. More of an action RPG, the Nioh series utilizes a key pulse system, a timed button press to restore stamina after a combo, rewards precise execution, and punishes careless aggression. The series' complex stance system and focus on combat mastery resonates strongest with the Onimusha design. And then we have the overall historical fantasy side of things. Onimusha 2's massively blended real Japanese history with a fictional supernatural narrative. Its story featured historical figures like Oda Nobunaga and Magoichi Saiga, but placed them in a world filled with demons and magic. This unique genre blend has become a staple of modern gaming. Let's look at Nioh 2. This series is arguably the spiritual successor to Onimusha in every way. It takes real historical figures and events from the Sengoku period, including William Adams and Hideyoshi Toyotomi, and pits them against mythical creatures like yokai from Japanese folklore. The games are set in the same tumultuous era as Onimusha, following a very similar formula of grounded historical combat against a fantastical demonic threat. Then of course we have the Ghost of Tsushima. While it takes a more grounded approach, the game includes some supernatural elements. Players can learn new moves by listening to mythical tales. And then you have the Ghost Stance, which gives the protagonist a seemingly superhuman ability to terrify and instantly kill enemies. This subtle blend of history and legend is a direct descendant of Onimusha's world building. Next, we have the allies and the relationship systems. The simple but effective ally system in Onimusha 2 was an early primitive precursor to the complex relationship systems found in modern RPGs. By giving gifts to Jubei's relationships with other characters deepened and unlocking new cutscenes and even changing the course of the story. The Persona series is definitely one of them. With a different genre, the social links or confidant systems in the Persona games is highly evolved version of this concept. Building relationships with characters through dialogues, gifts, and directly impacts the player's abilities and powers, just as Jubei's bonds with Magoichi or AK grant him aid in different battles. Then there's just modern day action RPGs. Modern games like from Fire Emblem to Mass Effect have a relationship system where interacting with party members, giving gifts, and engaging in dialogue can alter the story, unlock new ability, or combat bonuses. Onimusha 2 was a very early adopter of this idea in the action genre, showing that character relationships could be more than just simple cutscenes. But there we have it. This is why Onimusha 2 is still the best samurai game to date, and why people need to stop sleeping on this game and go play it, because this is a forgotten masterpiece. But if you enjoyed today's comprehensive deep dive retrospective of Onimusha 2, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I have another deep dive comprehensive review of Parasite Eve if you want to check that out as well. I'll leave it in the link in the top right hand corner or in the card at the end of this video. But as always, Outcast, I want you to stay safe out there, and it's been your host, Chaos DTV, signing out. Peace.